Have you ever heard someone say, your actions follow your thoughts? It's a way of saying that whatever we think about will eventually become what we experience or do. If we set our minds on something long enough, it will likely inform the way we act in our lives. Let's say you're invited to dinner with friends on a Friday night. It's been a long week, you're going to have to sit in traffic to get there, and you don't really love the restaurant. So you go into it thinking, this is not going to be fun at all. You've let this thought run through your mind all day to the point that by the time you're sitting at dinner, you're miserable. You're not having fun. You aren't enjoying the conversation. You have a chip on your shoulder about the food selection, and you're fixated on the traffic you'll encounter on the way home, too. Your mind is so focused on the things you don't like that instead of enjoying the time with people you love, you're acting like you're stuck in a moment of misery. Sounds dramatic, huh? Well, the reality is, whether we realize it or not, we all do this from time to time. We all have a tendency to focus on the negative at times. So much so that, in the end, we can miss out on all the good stuff too. We've all found ourselves in a place where we've started out feeling miserable about something, and it keeps us from enjoying the experience. Maybe we didn't even want to feel that way anymore, but we couldn't figure out how to get out of it. In other words, we felt stuck. And that's what we're talking about in this series. Last week, we talked about being stuck in a relationship. Today, we're going to talk about feeling stuck in a mood. You know what I'm talking about, right? One bad thing happens on your morning commute and it ruins the whole day. You fight with your spouse and you're still ticked off hours later. Or you go to bed feeling like you hate everything for no particular reason, and you can't quite shake it when you wake up the next day. It's not a great feeling for you. But it's also not a great feeling for the people around you. When you get stuck in a negative place, both mentally and emotionally, it doesn't just drain you, it drains everyone around you too. It creates a toxic environment inside of you and outside of you. Now, most of us have experienced this at one time or another. We all know what it feels like to be stuck in a mood or a feeling that we just can't get rid of. Typically, we tend to deal with it in one of two ways. It overflows. We let our negative thoughts, feelings, and mood overflow into the way we behave around others. Or we bottle it up. We keep it all inside, trying to work through these feelings internally. Regardless of how we handle being stuck in our feelings, we can all relate to the moment. The good news? The Bible holds some invaluable wisdom on this topic. It offers us insight into people who were a lot like you and me, people who got into trouble, made poor choices, felt fear, experienced discouragement, got angry, and fell into temptation. Lets us know we're normal, and it lets us see how other people dealt with the same situation, good or bad, so that we can learn from them today. To dive into all that and more, we're going to look at a passage from the book of Ecclesiastes. This Old Testament book is considered to be a wisdom book. Now, a wisdom book is a collection of sayings or insights that talks about the nature and reality of life. The book of Ecclesiastes is believed to be a brainchild of King Solomon, the son of King David, the most famous king of Israel. Solomon was not only the wisest man to ever live, he governed a country that was doing really well at the time. He was wealthy, wise, and successful. So things weren't all that bad for Solomon at the time. And from his place of power and influence and experience, Solomon shares this idea. There's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. So what does this mean exactly? It all connects with what Solomon shared at the beginning of these verses. There is a time for everything. Everything in life has its place, its season, and its moment. And just as it's important to know when that time begins, it's also important to know when it's ending. It's important to know when it's time to move on to the next season, the next moment, and yes, in our case, the next feeling or mood. If Solomon had made this passage about feelings, it might have said, there's a time to be miserable, a time to move on, a time to be sad, a time to celebrate, a time to be down, and a time to pick yourself back up. In other words, there is a time for the emotions we're feeling. We aren't being asked to be up all the time. That's impossible. And it's not real or authentic to our human experience. It's normal and good to let ourselves feel down when something bad happens. It's okay to be mad when something hurts us. It's normal to be sad when we're struggling. Bad moods are acceptable here. There's a time for all of that. And more importantly, it's normal. Which means there's also a time when we have to get ourselves unstuck from our feelings too. There's a time when we have to choose to step forward and out of what we're feeling and into something else instead. In fact, this passage tells us that there is a time for both sides of this equation. If there's a time to weep, there's also a time to laugh. If there's a time to mourn, there's also a time to dance. If there's a time to be silent, there's also a time to speak. This means our lives will have both. How we feel today does not determine how we'll always feel. At some point, it will be time for something else. A bad day, a bad feeling, a bad experience, a bad mood. None of it has to equal a bad life. So the healthiest thing we can do when we feel stuck in a bad emotion is to remember this is true. There is a time for everything, and this time won't last. We aren't stuck in our feelings, no matter how big and unchangeable they might seem at the time. Think of it this way. What you feel isn't forever. That's a huge deal for those of us who feel stuck in tough emotions right now. Not only does it give us hope that there's a better feeling ahead, but it reminds us to pause and consider the fact that we don't want to live our lives based on one negative feeling. We don't want to make long-term decisions based on short-term emotions. You don't want to make a decision to quit your job after one bad day. You don't want to drop out of your friend group the first time someone hurts your feelings. You don't want to leave your marriage after one fight. You don't want to give up on God when you're struggling emotionally. And reminding yourself that you aren't stuck in the feelings you're feeling will help you avoid all that and more. Here's the reality. Our mood isn't the boss of us. Our feelings aren't the best leaders. They aren't very reliable barometers of reality. We can pay attention to our emotions, but they don't need to run our lives. And look, bad moods may not feel temporary. In fact, they make you feel like things will never get better. But while the feelings are real now, they won't be there forever. And when you can see them in that way, it will help you handle them better. Eventually, it will help you get unstuck. Because what you feel isn't forever. Now, if you've ever been stuck in a low season, the idea of getting unstuck sounds good, but also seems easier said than done. But here's the truth. Just like your mood can drag your behavior along, the reverse is true as well. Sometimes your behavior can change your mood. You can actually live your way into feeling differently, and that's a great first step to getting unstuck. Here are some things that can kickstart the process for you. First, remind yourself that what you feel isn't forever. Go back to Solomon's wisdom and remind yourself there's a season, a time for everything. It doesn't mean it doesn't feel like forever now. It just means that you can start believing that it isn't. Even when the negative emotions feel powerful, heavy, all-consuming, and never-ending, you can remind yourself that there will be an end to that feeling, and God promises a new one ahead. Next, know that you have more power than you think. You are not a victim of your emotions. You are in control. You don't have to dictate your actions or determine your choices. They're a part of you, but they're not all of you. When you live in a way that demonstrates this, you take back the power that belongs to you and put your emotions in their proper place. Then focus on the good. It's possible in life to experience both good and bad at the same time. When life feels amazing, epic, and awesome, there are still some things that will feel negative, frustrating, and need some improvement. But the reverse is true as well. Even when life feels awful, there are still some good things to focus on too. Allow yourself to see the good around you and pay attention to it, even when you feel like doing the exact opposite. Learning to see both and not be held captive by the negative is a skill you can use your whole life. It's a great way to get unstuck. Finally, get outside of yourself. Sometimes we stay stuck in our negative emotions so long that we feel lost in them. But that doesn't mean we're doomed to be stuck there forever. Sometimes we just need a little outside to help get moving again. Don't be afraid to ask for help or to talk to someone who can give you the perspective you need. Talking to your small group leader, a spouse, a counselor, or a mentor can go a long way. Because whether it's depression or just a cycle of negative emotions you've been in too long, you can't always find your way out on your own. Most of all, you can talk to your Heavenly Father about any of this. Even if you feel like you're in a bad mood for a silly reason, you can still take it to the Lord. Even if your friends tell you you're being dramatic, you can still talk to God about it. Even if you feel like you're not supposed to have major emotions and negative feelings, you can be real with God about them. God created you and He loves you. And that means God not only knows and expects the feelings you're feeling, He also cares deeply about them. So as you seek to get unstuck, don't lose sight of the fact that God is right there with you, eager to hear and help. Remember, what you feel isn't forever. You can trust God's word when He says there's a time for everything.